everyone, and welcome to episode 19 of the Rewatch podcast presented by the Terrible Video Gamers Club. I'm your host, Tyler Schatz, still looking for his way up the pyramid of Marine, just like his buddy Dario. Joining me this fine recording session is one Stephen Howard.
The enjoyer, but only maker of subpar kidney pies.
Amanda Howard.
Can't make a kidney pie at all, sorry.
Nick Castillo.
Yeah, I was also going to talk about the kidney pie, but you can't sleep on the gravy. Most people overlook the gravy.
And definitely last, but certainly never least, Gary Delaney.
Character polishing Oberyn's spear.
All right. For this episode, we're discussing Season 4, Episode 7 and Episode 8. Episode 7, titled Mockingbird. Tyrion tries to find a champion. Daenerys sleeps with Dario. The Hound becomes wounded. Jon's advice is ignored at Castle Black. Brienne and Podrick receive a tip on Arya's whereabouts.
Is that what it says in the notes? Is Dany sleeps with Dario?
That's the summary on IMDb here. Is Dany sleeps with Dario, which is literally just a scene.
I know that was such a huge highlight. All right, continue.
Talk about it later on. Anyway.
Thing to note here is this is now the appearance of the third actor that plays the Mountain.
I think this is the one that everyone really associates with the Mountain, mostly when I talk to them.
Yep.
Because the first two
Bjornsson
have very limited scenes and like they don't have a lot of face work or talking.
Mm-hmm.
What was his name again, Nick?
Thor Bjornsson.
Yeah. Formerly the world's strongest man, I believe.
Correct. And I believe at this point when this episode comes out, he's like in his 20s or something. It's nuts. He's like early 30s, late 20s. Everybody was like, man, he's huge. But the crazy thing is he's like fairly a young dude. I mean, this show's been out for 10 plus years now, so he's probably staring down 40 soon. But yeah.
Yeah, and I remember hearing about like the diet he has to eat to keep himself like that built up, and he has to like wake up in the night to eat more calories to keep that up.
Insane.
No, thank you. All right, to start us off for this session here, Nick, I'm going to throw it to you for your first set of questions you got.
I had a couple of comments on the Hound and Arya. It's really interesting to see the dynamics between the two of them. The way that they started off was very much that Arya hated the Hound, and I think she still detests him. She's learning more and more from them in every interaction they have. I think in one of the previous episodes we talked about, or at least I had mentioned, I think, how like she was sword fighting with him. And in this episode, I really had a couple notes on that interaction where they come across the farm that was destroyed, where Tywin has placed out a bounty against the Hound, and the two random thieves who had threatened Arya when she was headed north for the wall actually jump the Hound and Arya. And like just before, she's having this interaction with this farmer, which is also a beautiful interplay between this man who's dying and like what his final conversation on Earth is. Then like the Hound stabs him to put him out of his misery, which again, that's kind of an act of kindness in a Hound kind of way. The Hound uses it as a teaching moment, right? And says that's where the heart is. And 2 seconds later, she puts that into practice, like in a very surgical way with a very small rapier. And so it's interesting to see their interaction. And I was curious what other takeaways you guys thought of that, or just in general, like what's the feedback you get on how their dynamic and their relationship is forming?
So I think I will say, maybe this is not about their dynamic and their relationship per se, but one of the things that struck me about that scene was Arya killing one of those dudes, one of the two highwaymen, and just the absolute, I don't know, mundaneness or normality that she goes about it, right into the heart, right where, I mean, we just said, the Hound had said it was, and just wipes it off, walks away. No ceremony, no second thoughts, no anything else. It's just stone
Remorse.
cold.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll definitely say too, like, it's definitely Arya learning more, like they're kind of becoming, as relationship wise, more of like maybe like a buddy cop kind of dynamic there, where they're like they're traveling the lands of Westeros, basically trying to make it to the Eyrie, so that way the Hound can sell Arya to Lysa Arryn there. But kind of along the way, they're kind of up to crazy adventures here, having I wouldn't say like enjoying one another's company, but they're kind of starting to appreciate, I think, one another somewhat here. It's not like full appreciation, everything like that, but a later part here, Nick, I don't know if you fully touched on this in your part, there was Arya kind of becoming more trusted by Sandor there when, after he's mending his wounds there, he's trying to sew it himself, and he can't, and he finally lets Arya come over and basically like clean it up for him and everything.
Had that as another note too. Yeah, that interplay about how he's timid at first, but then he lets her. I mean, at first he wasn't even going to give her a horse. He's worried that she would run away, and now he trusts his bare neck with her having a needle in it. Yeah, interesting. What's your thought?
Like, definitely the interplay has gone from like her being a prisoner to her being a willing companion, because she, like, it is communicated to her what the plan is, and the plan is they're going to get to the Eyrie, and like the Hound is doing it for money, but Arya doesn't really care about that. Like, she doesn't want to. I don't get the sense that she's gonna slight him out of his reward. Like, he did what he wants to get paid for. He escorted her to the Eyrie to safety. Like, she's just a willing companion on this journey. Like, even though that they're kind of sassy to one another. Steven?
So I was actually also thinking the buddy cop thing, the most horrific buddy cop thing ever. But, yeah, I do appreciate the like what you were saying, their familiarity with each other now, and it's almost a joke between them. Oh, what are you? And you're with her? Oh, she's my prisoner. It's like it's just a funny joke. It's a ha ha ha. Yeah, it's for real, but does it really matter? Do we really care? No. And I mean, it gets to there's a point in the next episode that we'll talk about as well that just it seems like that.
I was just going to agree with what you guys were talking about too. Just the mundane is the normality, like you said, of just they're just practicing killing people, and a couple people they've bumped into along the way. It's like, oh, did you talk to some of these folks? No, they all ended up dead. The farmer, the two guys that stopped and tried to attack the Hound. It's interesting how when she first killed someone, she stared at the body for a while, and the Hound was like, "Is that the first time you killed someone?" And she said, "Yes," and she just like stood there pondering it. Yeah, in this scene, she's just done.
She killed a boy in King's Landing. I award you no points, Nick.
She did. It's true.
Well,
Forgot about that.
What do you think, Gary, about some of these interactions? And do you think that that's a better road for her character, or do you think she's going down a dark place?
I think that she's evolving, much like Dexter. There's a theory in the Dexter show. Going down a rabbit hole. No, it's Dexter. It's Dexter in Breaking Bad, where every time Dexter kills someone, he takes on some of their mannerisms. The same with the gentleman from Breaking Bad. Every time he kills one of the crime lords, he takes on one of their mannerisms. I think she's just learning how to survive in a world without her father or her mother. Like, the only role models she has are the Hound, and even though he's morally ambiguous, he's not Joffrey. He's not, he's the best role model she has. Her older sister's a shit role model. So
that's a good point. As what's the word? If some compromised as we think that the Hound is, he's not Joffrey on the hot pie to Joffrey scale.
I love it. That's the new scale. We're
Oh,
past
The
maybe
new scale. Hot pie to
that's the
Joffrey.
opposite ends of the spectrum there, huh?
Right. Got to really, really far separate them, polar opposites. Where do you think the Hound currently is from his actions and what he says to how he is with Ari? Yeah.
I think that he's sort of at the 40% line towards like whatever the hot pie section. Because I think as you hear him talk more and more, he sort of compares himself to his older brother, the mountain that rides. And he really just doesn't understand. He's never understood why his brother is such a cruel, cruel bastard. And obviously, that's why he's a cruel, cruel bastard, because that's the world he grew up in. But he doesn't want to be that person. So he knows how to be a cruel, cruel bastard to survive, but he doesn't feel like he needs to. He's not doing it for greed or self-improvement. He's just doing it to survive and for a little bit of the tickle it feels when someone dies. So, Stephen?
So, two things here. Number one, I want to say screw you all for ruining Breaking Bad and Dexter for me. I have never seen either. So, that's my fault. I understand that entirely. But
I don't think I ruined it that bad.
No.
Also, they've been out for like how long?
I know they've been out forever. But anyways, the second thing, I entirely agree with Gary, and I might put him further on the hot pie side, just because of a conversation that they have between each other as well. And I might be overstepping a little bit. This might be in the next episode. I don't remember which episode it is, but Arya and the Hound have a conversation about the Hound saying, why did I even take you with me? Why are you even here? I mean, all you do is causing me trouble. All you do is... It is okay, perfect. It is this episode. All you do is cause me trouble. All you do is cause me pain. And yet, what does he do? His actions say he just continues on with it. He continues, helping himself in a little bit of an abstract way to get the money. But really and truly, he's helping out this girl that's causing him all this trouble, all this grief. He is a better than average warrior. I would say he's probably a better than good warrior. He could find himself employment that doesn't require bringing a hostage anywhere.
I knew that was a really important conversation and really, interesting for the character. But I also had this thought the whole time of being like, dude, you took her. Like, you kidnapped her. It wasn't like she forced you or begged you to bring her along.
True.
I think the turning point was the red wedding, because at the red wedding he just literally grabbed her and said, "You don't want to be here. Like, we don't want to be here. Like there's no happy ending here. Like, the happy ending is that we're not here." Like,
his first act, I would say, is to save her from that situation. Like, I don't think he grabbed her in that moment and said, "I'm going to try and go sell you to your Aunt Lysa." That wasn't his intent. His intent was to save her from being a Stark at that situation. Oh, yeah, I would say, I would actually back up more with what Steven said, that she's further on the hot pie spectrum. Exactly. Interesting dynamic with those two. Do you want me to keep going, or should I throw it to somebody else?
Keep going.
The one other comment I had in this episode was, what was it here?
You needed to take better notes.
I don't take notes. Like I said, I was very busy. The comment that I had down too, not just the buddy cop duo of Arya and the Hound, but also of Brienne and Pod for King.
Pod for King.
I really like their dynamic as well, where especially in the tavern where they are introduced again, and we see Hot Pie make his glorious reentrance, talking about kidney pie. It's interesting because we would think that Brienne would be the more worldly knowledgeable person to read the situation. I wholeheartedly agree. That would not be a tactful thing when you're walking around with Lannisters, soldiers everywhere, knowing that Sansa Stark is a hot topic button, and anyone with her whereabouts could be a dangerous threat to the Lannisters. She's just out talking to random people. Like, who is Hot Pie? No one knows who he is. And she's like not even like whispering it to their waiter, Hot Pie. She's just in the tavern talking. This 7-foot tall, blonde haired woman wearing armor, everyone would be staring at her, I would think. So the tactfulness, or not tactfulness, I'll say, of Brienne, but then also outside as well, how Pod tries to give her that coaching to say, I wouldn't do this. Because we keep joking at Pod and how he can't cook for crap, and he, what did you do? Anything for Tyrion? I helped him get wine, and that was it. It's like Pod doesn't really seem that knowledgeable. He can't ride a horse. He can't really perform his squirely duties. But in that situation, he does have some redeeming qualities. So yeah, what do we think of that dynamic?
I was actually thinking that like Brienne sort of comes at this like the White Knight vision of who she needs to be. And I would honestly wonder if that's because she always wanted to be a knight, but if you're a lady, you don't really have another knight who's willing to have you as their squire. So she just had to make the assumptions of like what the knights are like in the fairy tales, and that's who she obtains to be. Whereas Pod literally like got told, like he was trained, like if Tyrion did nothing, he did actually squire Pod in how to like work through politics, because that is Tyrion's greatest tool, is to outwit his opponent. So, and that's really proof that like Tyrion was trying to teach him something to keep him alive. Steven?
So I think that what Podrick shows is an abundance of common sense and an abundance of wisdom in this situation. And those aren't necessarily qualities or traits that are shown in a knight. That's not necessarily qualities or traits that allow you to ride a horse, that allow you to fight, that allow you to cook. But they are traits that are incredibly important, and one of the reasons to Podrick's continued survival. He always has this common sense or wisdom about him to be able to read the situation and read it, I mean, sometimes comically, but that's usually just like with friends, quote unquote, if you're going to call Tyrion a friend or etc. But when it comes down to it, he's going to stick a sword in the back of the guy that's going to kill you because he knows it's the right thing to do. He is going to be able to know what the women need at the prostitute house because he's worldly like that. He has this common sense about him that just exceeds everything, which is why he should be king. And I yield my time to the senator from Brookings.
He knows his way around a true Myronese knot, is what you're saying. Yeah, they have that line in that scene where Brienne's like, what did you learn from Lord Tyrion or whatever? And he says, I learned who is married to who and who hates who. Right? Which absolutely, yeah, in this Game of Thrones, there's far more value in knowing who is an ally and who is not, depending on the current circumstance, rather than how to properly cook a rabbit. So, absolutely.
Well, and also sort of going back to like the first episode of understanding which bannermen are sworn to which houses. So that's the sort of knowledge that he's passing on to Pod. And I don't know, does it explain what Pod's standing is before he squires? Is he the son of some noble or?
Oh, I don't think so.
Isn't he? Is Podrick Payne? Wasn't he related to Sir Ilan Payne?
Must be. Holy
I don't
cow!
know.
I just made that connection. That is the farthest. Like you're talking about a spectrum. How about the Podrick Payne to Sir Ilan Payne?
I didn't know his last name was Payne.
Yeah,
Isn't it Podrick Payne? Am I right?
I'm pretty sure it is.
That sounds right.
He's
Tyler?
a distant cousin to the more famous Sir Ilan Payne, the king's justice.
Oh my god, that is a gulf to.
Well, but that would make him somebody of a higher house, because I believe Ilan Payne
it's
his tongue talking back to the Mad King.
So, and I will also say one of the things that struck me about their relationship is how, and I think Nick, you are completely correct on this, how unworldly Brienne is. And Gary, you might be right. Maybe she's only grown up with what she's read about knights and what she's they're supposed to be doing. And so she has this idealistic of what they're supposed to be doing. I mean, walk into the tavern like it's an old cowboy movie, right? Walk into the tavern, I'm here for Big Bart. And so, oh, I know where Big Bart is. He's out terrorizing the cattle. And that's kind of what she's like expecting to happen. And that is also, yes, my Western accent. But anyways, I am kind of, I was a little struck that she didn't know the different relationships, like as being a knight and as being brought up someone who values that idea of chivalry and et cetera, et cetera. Wouldn't that be on her course list to kind of learn?
I agree. I feel like she should have known that. But I can't fault her too much because I feel like that's what I would want to be like, oh, even if I know that knights aren't necessarily good and shining perfect, I think I'd want to act how I would want them to act. But I also know that that's an impossible naivete, so I am surprised. So, because when Podrick is telling her, I just don't think we should be doing this, I'm like, I'm right with you. You really should not. It worked out, but because of plot. But that's it.
Yep. We made the comment actually after, obviously, your friend and mine, Hot Pie, comes out and actually gives them a little bit of useful information after that. And she looks at Pod and goes, ha, see, it worked. And I'm just sitting there goes, you're learning all the wrong lessons here.
Right.
In this show, literally no one has a good ending, so you should not be taking that.
Yes.
I guess my question for the behind baseball is that like Hot Pie, they could have just ran into Hot Pie, but I feel like it's so much more interesting that they gave that actor like a 2-minute speech that literally meant nothing. Like all it did was set up that he's just a friendly guy, and this is his new life. Is that he's just the
He's living his best life in that inn.
Yeah.
It's showing that not everyone has a horrible ending in this Game of Thrones. There are some people. You can't prove it. You're right. You can't. But there are some people, at least for what we see, who actually appear to turn out okay. Actually, somehow escape what has been happening and come out better for it and come out happy. And it's a little refreshing to see in the midst of all this death, cunning, and whatnot. Just a hot pie. Just a hot pie.
It smiled when he came on screen, and I was like, oh, hey, that's nice. Also, he did fantastic on his little direwolf. Like, it looked fantastic.
Right? He said this one turned out much better.
Yes.
That's awesome.
It did.
To coin one of Tyler's favorite phrases, chaos is not a pit. Chaos is a ladder. And yeah, some people come out the other side of the crucible, making hot pies and using their talents, doing exactly what they're meant to do in this earth in Westeros. Whereas, to bring it back full circle to my original point with the Hound and Arya and the random poor farmer they stumble across who's dying, some random people don't get that balance that he talked about, right? An even trade between I do something for you and you pay me for this. There's no balance left in the world. Nothing's fair. People would rather spit on you. And so, yeah, some people get their happy ending and some people certainly don't. Those are the two that I'll start with for this. I'll let other people get their 2 cents in and I'll chime in if needed.
All right. We're
To you,
looking forward to that. Going over to Mr. Gary Delaney there, what do you got?
Going back to Arya, they talked about the gentleman that she stabs, the cage guy. I think he has an actual name.
George.
Yeah, for like 5 seconds.
Yeah. And that led me to the question as to what percentage Arya is at on her kill list. And I think it's 3. Polliver, the cage dude, and Joffrey. And I think she's up to like 7-ish, and this guy would make the 8th. So I think she's batting about 30%.
Does Joffrey count? She didn't do anything with that. That's like getting
so
a
you're
week.
saying you have to deduct. You make that a miss because she didn't get to kill. And obviously, they talked about in the episode, she was sad that she didn't get to kill him.
Yeah.
And the Hound was like, "Who the hell cares? He got what he was coming to him. He was a prick."
And she spoke his name, and then he died. I mean, if words have
That's good.
power.
Good enough for Stannis and what's her name?
Melisandre.
Wiener leeches.
Countered it.
Stannis and the Wiener leeches.
Yeah.
Status is weird leeches.
I mean, if Arya just wants you dead and speaks your name but never actually kills you and you still die, I've got to worry.
Where's that little meme of like, Stannis like, haha, I got the usurper, and he's just over there with that little smile meme of like, I got him first.
Anyway, that was my my random thought during the episode was just like, what percentage was she at? And I had to go Google it. Was it the second question? I only have 2 questions, Tyler. You'd be proud of me for this episode 7. Does Robin Arryn have a twisted sense of justice? When Robin Arryn is talking to Sansa, and Sansa's talking about Winterfell of like, oh yeah, I was just rebuilding it from memory. It's probably changed. And then he asks like, oh, does Winterfell have a moon door? Oh, we'll have to build a moon door. And because that's his sense of justice. Like, he doesn't believe a lord could be a good lord without like just throwing people he doesn't like into the hole. Tyler?
So your question is, does he have a sense of justice there, or is it?
Yeah. Does he have some sense of justice, or is it just like he just pushes anyone he doesn't like? Like that's.
I don't think he really understands like ruling and justice and all of that stuff. He's been so underneath his mom's tit, literally. There, basically.
I wish that was a false statement.
I mean, as he's growing up here, basically, he was a sickly little boy there and stuff like that. He's never done really anything outside of the Eyrie, outside of the little chamber he grew up in there. So he probably doesn't know what justice really truly is. It's not just throwing people you don't like through the moon door. There's more that goes into it. Steven.
I think that's an perfect statement. And he specifically says, you can throw whoever you want, people you don't like out the moon door. I'm going to marry you, Sansa. If there's someone you don't like, I'll throw them out the moon door for you. And that's not justice. That's terror. And I guess terror is in its own justice in a really warped sense. But and it alludes to this later on in that same exact scene. He's just a spoiled little boy. There's no justice or thought to it. It's whatever he wants, and whatever you want. That's not justice. That's literally just being spoiled.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's more so. He's always seen that's what his mom does, and if that's like we said, living under a rock, living under tit, or only seeing that breed of justice being dispensed. Yeah, it's like this is what everyone else. It's one of those things where if something happens to someone and everyone else cheers, you're kind of like, I don't really agree with that, but gang mentality. Yeah, that was awesome. And that's all this young boy who's very naive has seen his whole life. I think that's something he perpetrates. And in the very first episode, not the first episode, but the first season, when Tyrion's at the Eyrie, he says that out. He's like, make the little man fly or whatever, mommy. Like, he's just, rather than justice or offer him some penance or fair trial or a good shake, he's just like, nope, get rid of him because it seems like he's bothering my mom and he's done something bad. So let's just kill him. And that's the only way to do it. So it's interesting for sure. I think it is, to answer your question, Gary, a slighted version of justice. But yeah, I think Tyler mentioned it spot on that he's just very naive and doesn't really know how the world works. To say nothing of like the consequences of his action. I don't think Lord Robin has ever had consequences for anything he's done.
Which is ironic because I was curious. Oh, sorry, Amanda. You can go.
Oh no, you're fine. I don't find myself agreeing with Lord Baelish very often. But in this case, when he said at one point that that his mother should have done that to him. I don't know about slapping him, but at the same time, like his mom, she's never disciplined him or like really raised him other than just to tell him that he was a lord and he could do whatever he wanted. So I found myself agreeing with Lord Baelish for once.
Baelish
sure that will.
Oh
no!
Oh no!
Gary, how could you do this to us?
All shocked by who said it.
Oh. Well, and also it just was curious if Robin Arryn being a little spoiled kid is more to move the plot forward, or if we're supposed to be expecting a I'm supposed to be expecting an evolution of this character, so we'll have to stay tuned to see. That is all of my questions for episode 7. So Tyler, who would you like the next questions to go to?
Steven, what do you got?
So I have two things, and I think they're kind of instrumental in this episode. Number one is Lysa herself gets to fly. And I guess my question isn't so much about... I was talking about this at the time as well. When Lysa gets kicked out of the window and plummets to her doom, I felt not a shred of sympathy. I was just like, yep, gonna happen. But what I was wondering more is, do you think Littlefinger kissed Sansa knowing that Lysa would see it, trying to cause that entire scene so he could get rid of her? Tyler.
Yes. Littlefinger is constantly at least 2 steps ahead of everybody else at this point in time in the show there, pretty much. Because it all started with him convincing Lysa to poison her husband, Jon, at his behest, and then writing the letter to Catelyn, you know, kind of throwing the Lannisters under the bus, saying it was them who did it there. And then, you know, going further back, too, she's been absolutely obsessed with Littlefinger since they were younger. He only had eyes, though, for her older sister. I think, somebody correct me, is Catelyn the older one, or is it Lysa the older one?
Catelyn is the older one, I believe.
I think Catelyn's older.
So, yeah, Littlefinger only had eyes for Catelyn totally there. When she constantly, like, I think he kind of just led her along probably a little bit there, too, the entire time. Obviously, just keeping somebody in your back pocket the whole time. But then, yeah, too, so...
Yeah, he had her under his tit.
Yes. But yeah, otherwise then too, so, you know, he's making the play in the Eyrie there now of kind of gathering more power to his side, marries Lysa Arryn there to kind of then be next to Robin Arryn, the Lord of the Eyrie, gets his mother out of the way, so that way then he has more of a controlling say in what they do for Robin Arryn there. Nick.
I'll be quick. I give mass props to Steven. Every once in a while you hear something and you're just like, the dots connect. Yeah, I hadn't thought that at all, but of course he would be somebody that's thought all that out. Even hearing your response, Tyler, I was connecting the dots thinking to myself, well, no, I mean, he bedded her that first night. Like, he must have some sympathy because he cared for her. But no, absolutely. He would know the knowledge enough to know if you consummate the marriage on the wedding night, it is binding that you two are husband and wife. And so then that's his in, that we consummated this marriage before gods and men. So if something happens to my wife sooner rather than later,
and she's very formal about consummating it.
Right. Which again, all this just plays into that. Like, everyone heard her, you know, it was all night long. And I think that I don't know if he meant maybe do it and know that she was right there, but maybe he was aware of the fact that she was very suspicious, and so. Dang, like, even as I'm saying it, no, I think he might have done it knowing she was right up on the parapet behind him. Because in that moment, too, like, he stares at her for a while after he kisses her. Like, he backs up, and in my mind, he was looking at it like, oh, crap, I shouldn't have done that. Or I maybe might have overstepped myself, like, gauging Sansa's response. But, dang, I wonder if he's, like, sitting there staring at her, thinking to myself, is she watching? Is she there? I can feel her eyes watching us do this. Maybe he was like planned it that way. Like, hey, sweetie, go meet me in the garden or something later around 3 o'clock, and then just wanders down there and happens to find them both there, and then like plans it that's what happens. I don't know. It's an interesting concept. So, Stephen, the points I do not get awarded from Gary, I give to Stephen.
Oh, I'm on the board.
I would say that I don't think he specifically planned that those cards would fall in this episode. I think he was maybe setting some groundwork that maybe he could have an affair with Sansa. You know, everyone needs a backup plan, being Warden of the North, or, you know, putting the cards. But I think the way that the scene played out, like, I don't think that would have been Peter's plan, that Sansa could have possibly been thrown through the moon door before he even got there. Like, Lysa is fucking unstable. So why would you trust Like, you'd want that situation to play out in a different way that would allow like Sansa not to be there, or like to not put Sansa in danger. Or maybe it was all a plan, and the fact that it played out that way made Sansa feel like he did her a solid. I don't know.
I do kind of agree with you, Gary, there about Lysa being a little bit of a wild card probably for Baelish there. But then also too, and this is talked about in the next episode from Sansa specifically, kind of it's better to keep the ones you know closest to you than the ones you don't know. I think Baelish knows enough that Sansa is a little bit more easily manipulated than Lysa probably was. Even though Lysa is completely fond of Peter and everything like that, he can do probably more with Sansa than he could with Lysa Arryn. Steven.
I also think that you have the idea that she is a wild card and she knows she's going to create havoc and chaos. Maybe he couldn't predict exactly what the havoc and chaos was going to be, but he knew that he could. He's the master of exploiting things as they happen. I bet he had enough confidence in his ability to manage that chaos to make it go through. And that's kind of, and again, I don't know if this is this episode or the next one. I apologize. I think it's this one. But he's talking to Sansa and he says, you have to burn the existing system down, I believe, to... It is next episode. Okay, sorry. But you have to burn the existing system down to build a new one. And that's something that letting loose a bomb, that's going to burn down that system. It's going to cause a whole bunch of chaos. And it's... I think that's what his plan was, personally. I just see that as such a big mistake that Littlefinger would not make without some sort of reasoning. I mean, Littlefinger's the last person to walk up to someone and go, "Oh, my dick is tingling. I'm going to let it think for me today."
Playing devil's advocate that he did have it planned, Peter also comes into the scene from the opposite side of the courtyard as Sansa, and I think it's, at least based on bad scene geography, there is a possibility that if I was to believe you, that he might have just left Lysa to walk down to the courtyard. He's like, I'm going to go see what Sansa's up to. See what she's doing down there. Sounds like those kids are having a little bit of a disagreement. They're raising their voices. We better go down there and see what's going on. Don't worry, Uncle Peter's got this one.
I hear the children. I'll check on them.
My penis feels tingly.
God damn it.
My Peter sense.
That was good. I like that. There is one more big issue in this episode, and that is what I think is, I guess, Tyrion has 3 conversations with 3 different people in his jail cell, trying to convince each of them to fight for him. The last one's kind of a given, but it is very... the interplay between each person as he talks to them. Jaime trying to get him to fight for him. Jaime saying, I'm not what I was. I'm a gimp. I'm going to die. Well, think about what you would do to father. And he's like, I can't do it. I have too much to live for. Go to the next person, Bronn. Bronn's like, man, I'd help you if I could, or if it benefited me, but it doesn't. And I am honest to God sorry about that, because you're a really good friend. And Tyrion says, why do you think you are my friend? This is exactly what I like. And it's this conversation between each of them that is really kind of, in a sad way, warming. Because Tyrion has these really good friends who are, I mean, they're not suicidal, but they are there for them and willing to try. Sorry, Gary.
Yeah, I think that's interesting you say that. I didn't even realize all 3 scenes take place in the same episode. But yeah, I think with his brother, his brother was plan A. And I think it was his brother having to tell him that, it's not public knowledge that Jaime is not, a fearable swordsman anymore, because his ambiance of being a great swordsman is what gives him power. But he's in the privacy of a jail cell is I'm not good enough. Are you good enough to take the Hound? Mm-hmm. No. Because Jaime and Tyrion probably know who the Hound is, or at that point, or not the Hound, the Mountain. At that point, had the Mountain been named? Like, both of them grew up in the same area of the country. They know exactly who the fuck the Mountain is. Like, I'm sure he's just the crazy Uncle Gregor. And then when Bronn comes in, like, you can sense that Bronn is really proud of himself as, like, based on circumstances that he just happened into, he was given a wife, like a title, a nice new outfit, and it really came down to like him being like, I'm really proud of myself, and I'm trying to do the honorable thing and tell you
Yeah.
you got the deal is so good that you can't outbid it. And he's like, yes, I could probably kill him, but one little misstep and I'm dead. And then all of this is it's like a double or nothing plan. So he's like, I'll take what I got. Like, and then I guess the last scene, and maybe I was drifting off at that point, like, I didn't think that he really asked that last guy.
No.
Oberyn just sort of volunteered. Like, on a rewatch, you realize, like, it's not really a shock. Like, Oberyn's story arc is very much colliding into that scene of, like, that's what he came to King's Landing for. After this is done, he can go home. So, Nick?
Well, real quick. After this is done, he's not going home. He specifically says he has a list. He has a list just like Arya does. The Mountain is the first on that list.
Sorry, start with Sir Gregor. Exactly.
Well,
I think
his list was to figure out if there were other accomplices. Like, he wants to figure out if Tywin was involved, was a conspirator. Sorry, Nick. That's it.
You're fine. I think he absolutely was thinking Tywin already, because like you had mentioned, Gary, yourself, the Clegane house they're in the Westerlands. They've pledged allegiance to Tywin, which is why he says Sir Gregor would not have done anything had it not been Tywin who told him to do it. So he absolutely thinks Tywin is guilty. I'm glad you brought up Bronn. I had missed that too, but all three of those interchanges, it's his brother who can't, it's Bronn who won't, it's Oberyn who agrees to do it. It's interesting how each one has their own reasons why, back and forth. And yeah, absolutely, just to play off the comments you guys had made, when Bronn shows up, Tywin jokes and says, "Is there another wife you want or a third castle?" Like, he's sees that his friend is willing to at least come talk to him. If someone's ever willing to sell him out, that he'd make them a better offer. What I always pay my debts. You're a good friend. Obviously, I can't match that. And they reach this impasse. I didn't tear up, but you feel that tear-jerking mood when they shake hands and Tyrion like holds it like, I care about you. You're a good friend. Watch your back. I appreciate all you've done for mine. And the same too, where Bronn, kind of pats his little hand and is like, your head, and he says that, they sing songs about it if I lost my head or something to that effect. And Bronn says, I hope they do. It's this, really that Tyrion is the lord of the Lannisters. He doesn't have the title, but he's absolutely, one of the royal families for the Lord Paramount out in the West. And Bronn is a nobody who's come to earn the respect and understanding that they are kind of equals in that scene. Bronn probably even has the better situation because he's exiting the jail cell. And so it's interesting to see that flip, but also that kinship between these two characters. Like we said, not everybody gets to have those nice moments in this show. From where Bronn started to where he is now, you wouldn't think he'd be that endeared to a main character. But in a way, they've really earned each other's respect.
So I'll go basically just agreeing with everybody. The point I'm going to try and make then too is it's kind of interesting how the first person he talks to and the last person he talked to kind of have some parallels with each other. Talking with Jaime there, his brother, they kind of have some reminisce about family growing up and everything. They get into a lot more too the second episode too that we'll talk about here, but then like they're talking about family and like, he says, just imagine the look on father's face when you die, and all of our house Lannister basically goes with you in that. It's kind of like just, a brotherly connection there. But then with Oberyn there, he talks about how he originally met Tyrion way back when Tyrion was a little baby. They were finally introduced to Tyrion by Cersei, Tyrion's sister there, and he was made to be this monster and stuff like that. And he's really, when they finally saw him, he's not really there. And you kind of see, listening to Oberyn talk, you see the kind of, I think, sadness kind of well up in Tyrion there of just how much hatred his sister had for him, even at a younger age. Because she tells
Absolutely.
Oberyn, come see the monster that killed my mom," or something like that. So it's just kind of interesting there. Like, you get the love from the brother, but then you learn about the hatred from the sister there. I think, Steven, you were next.
I just wanted to also say, for Bronn and for Jaime, you also come away with that situation. No, they're not going to directly help him, but you get the feeling very much that if there's anything they can do extra, if there's any little way they could play more of a role, they're probably going to do it. They're on his side. They're just not willing to die.
My last point was, I think Nick alluded to it, and I kind of forgot it when Bronn left the cell. He says like, "Oh, well, what if I, in the battle of combat, killed the mountain?" And yeah, Bronn says, "That is a song I'd like to hear." And I think it's just like they both acknowledge that it's definitely an uphill battle for a dwarf to kill the mountain that rides. But if it happened, it would be the thing of legend. Like, not just David versus Goliath. It's like, I don't know who's a midget that would.
Tywin versus the mountain.
Tyrion versus the mountain.
Versus the mountain.
Absolutely.
The munchkin. A munchkin. That might also be a offensive statement. I apologize.
Those were all my two major points.
All right. Amanda, what do you got for us?
The other thing I thought about that conversation with Bronn is it's interesting that, like, I was thinking about the fact that Bronn is not a good guy at all, and yet, like, I don't know about you guys, but like, I've come to root for him as well. And he and Tyrion both talk about how he's not a good guy, and even in that conversation, he mentions how he's going to get married, and his soon-to-be wife is not going to inherit the castle unless her older sibling dies, and babies fall from their horses all the time, so who knows what could happen. Like,
also, that the older sister was gonna die before the father.
yeah,
like he was gonna make sure that there wasn't like it looks less suspicious if the sister died after she inherited it, but if she dies before.
And I mean, maybe then he's got a plan for the father as well. Either way, he's not a good guy. He talks about this. He knows he's not a good guy. We're rooting for him, and yet there's still like, it's kind of like the Hound. There's still like, he is saying here like, I regret this is happening. I wish I could help you. That's two very different sides to a person right there. What do you guys think about that?
I think it tells how far the characters have evolved. Bronn, we've seen, sleep through many brothels. He's with many women. Whenever Tyrion comes to call on him, the fact that he's willing to take a deal where he is betrothed, even if he's planning to alter the deal down the road, I think speaks to how much he's willing to commit to get what he wants. I mean, if it's just castle and the richness, this could be a means to an end. But I think there are some civilities that need to be followed in those situations in order to get to that place. Like, you'd have to have a wedding. There'd be it sounds like it's to a family of some prestige, so there's going to be witnesses and people who are there. Even if the situation changes down the road because he intervenes, I think that it says how far he's willing, how high he's willing to climb. That's probably the best way to say it.
I think, I guess, yeah, it's sort of a mixture of Nick's points. Is like, I think he sees it as a retirement. Like, before this, he was just a sellsword, and he was making his way in the world, like just doing whatever the hell he wanted. He went from like town to town, killed people, got some money, moved along, and now he doesn't have to do that anymore. He could put down roots. He can live in a nice castle, be a lord. But also, as Nick said, there's sort of an evolution is that I think he starts taking, sort of learning how Tyrion is a lord, and Tyrion's very morally ambiguous, and kind of seeing on the inside. I'm sure from the outside, like, no one knows the Lannisters are so morally ambiguous, like, and then they are kind of shady people. They're probably held up to be very lordly people, but from the inside, he realized, like, oh, well, I can do this gig. I could be a lord. Like, all it is being a shady bastard, but I don't have to kill people. I just, like, have other people kill them. So, I don't know. Steven?
Well, and I think we get back to the mountain to pod range there. Or what is it? No, mountain to hot pie. Sorry, mountain to hot pie. And I mean, everyone's on that range just because you.
Joffrey. You forgot your boy Joffrey.
Damn it, it was Joffrey. I'm sorry.
Joffrey to Hot Pie Mountain to
Joffrey to Hot Pie range. And everyone in this show, to the showmaker's credits, has a little bit of Joffrey and a little bit of Hot Pie. And how much of each they have is different. And that's what Bronn has. Bronn has a little bit of Joffrey in him, a little bit of, I'd say a little bit more Hot Pie, and as he gets more established, he's more willing to, I mean, this is the normal, as you get more established, you get more tied to the stability and commonality of the area that you're in, and therefore you become more entrenched, etc., etc., and that's what's happening to him. But also, he's able to let kind of a nicer side show. Not that he's a nice dude, he's planning on killing his wife's sister, but nicer side.
I
He's
think it
got a
speaks.
redemption arc.
I think it speaks to his moral ambiguity that he's probably saying it in a joking fashion, but he's still who he is. That we don't know if that's true or not. He's just kind of, matter of fact. Ladies fall off their horses and break their necks all the time. It's like, it's one of those things you're like, you've thought about this.
I think if he ever saw the opportunity that he could get away with it, he would. But I don't think what is the degrees of murder? First, second, or third degree. I don't think he's gonna calculate or plan a murder. But if an opportunity falls in his lap, he's gonna take it. But also, I think it's a good sign for him because any character who has a redemption arc in Game of Thrones dies. So he's living the long life. He's doing shady shit. Shady shit keeps you alive.
You either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
even when he was like commander of the City Watch, like before the city was being sieged, like remember there was the marked decrease in crime, and like granted, it was because they rounded up all the known thieves. Like Bronn did that. It's weird. Interesting combination. My other point I had was just back over to the Eyrie over there with Sansa and Robin when they're building their little snow castle, Winterfell. I thought it was interesting just when Sansa gets when Robin starts destroying her little snow castle, Sansa slaps him. You don't really see her fight back in any little way. It was such a small little thing. See, and I thought that was interesting. Sorry?
I think similar to captors taking part of their captees or captor. Yeah, I think she's becoming a little bit more like Joffrey. She's just being brutally evil, like because someone like didn't go along with what you wanted. I think on the Joffrey to Hot Pie, I think Sansa is about a 6 right now, which was that she's super fucking morally ambiguous, and she's gonna fucking kill a bitch.
So Sansa
yet.
slaps this guy who ruins her snow castle, and she's an evil bitch. But your boy Joffrey over there.
It's a gateway move. One day you're slapping people, the next day you're shooting crossbows at prostitutes.
And
It
your
just
your
happens
hero of
fast.
the revolution literally flays people, but that's fine. But Sansa slaps this kid, and no, she's evil.
Lying in the sand.
Oh, real quick. I was just gonna say Gary's against child abuse. That's why he was always a fan of the hero of the revolution who would never harm a child.
So it should be maybe not Joffrey, but the hero of the revolution to hot pie, somewhere on that scale.
There we go.
You're not gonna speak poorly of the hero of the revolution. You leave Joffrey at the bottom. Leave the hero of the revolution as morally ambiguous. I have a point
above
about
the
where he is
system.
in the next episode.
Of the system. To speak to that point, Amanda, I would say that she is more so fed up with things that she can control. Not so much on the deep end as Gary is about how violent she actually is and tendencies of her heart. But I think that she is aware that Robin is spoiled, or that Robin may be simple-minded in some regards, and she sees a chance to maybe treat him like a younger sibling. Like, she got after Arya in the early seasons, even though she was still very naive, about how evil she thought Arya was, or being mean to her, or picking on her, and she would chase her around the Winterfell a couple episodes. I think that it's more so, well, this little boy is talking back to me. She doesn't see him as a strong lord, prince, truly what he is, of the Vale. It's more so, this little kid is talking back to me, and he stepped on my castle, and because she even says, you're being stupid, wouldn't say that to any other prince. She just kind of says, trying to get him in his place, calm down, why are you so angry? And he screams at her, I think, before she finally slaps him, and that's what shuts him up. So I don't know, maybe she's not trying to calm him down, but just, you're being dumb, why are you acting this way? You're hysterical, whack. And it's a reactive thing. I don't think she did it to try and assert anything. It's just the moment reactionary, you're being a little bitch, I'm gonna treat you like one.
After everyone else, I don't know, she's been controlled by everybody else. Now she feels safe. Now she's in an area. It's the first time in a little while that you actually see her
Mm-hmm.
kind of react or before something rather than just
she,
watching everything happen around her. Harry?
she's got fight left in her.
Okay, going back to the Joffrey conversation.
Oh
Here we
no.
go. So I think the conversation really starts with her building Winterfell and having a very childlike moment and wanting to show it, and she sort of shows it to him like a little brother, and then the next thing he says, oh, well, when we're married, I'll be married to you. And I was like, if there's ever a twisting the dagger, it's reminding her that she is going to be forcibly betrothed to her cousin, similar to Joffrey, who in an earlier season said, oh, well, mother says I have to keep you around because I'm still to marry you. That's how she feels. They have to keep her around because Liza needs someone to marry Robin to, and someone to marry Robin to that they can keep under their thumb, like Sansa, who's a beaten, destroyed human being. So she's still controlled. She's in a very controlled situation where she's just fucking sick of it, and she is sick of being betrothed to motherfuckers.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and I do think also that in that scenario, when he says, "Oh, and we're going to be married," I'm not sure with how much seriousness she really takes anything from him. At this point, she's been married once, she's been betrothed to a different person, she's all this other stuff, and I'm not entirely sure she's entirely sold that she's going to marry this one kid, especially
Fianced to a third. She was fianced to the Lord of Highgarden.
You're right.
Oh yeah.
And I'm not sure she takes that super seriously. I think she more just, in that scene, it looked to me like she just looks down on Lord Aaron, whatever his name is. I forget his first name. As she should. dude's a little brat, and he is. But the thing that I wanted to get to is it also goes to show how emotionally stunted they both are. Lord Aaron is obviously emotionally stunted from being under his mother's tit for so long, as our friend so elegantly put it. But that's not if you are how old is she at this point? 16, 17, 18, something like that?
If that, maybe even.
If this kid goes up that is just he's a powerful kid, but a kid nonetheless, and he breaks down your snow fort and you throw a fit about it, what type of emotional control is that, especially for someone who's supposed to be in royalty, who's supposed to be engaged to all these sort of different things? It shows an emotional stuntedness that she has not grown out of being a child. She threw a childish tantrum just like he did. His was worse, but she did the same thing. And I think it goes to show just how neither of those characters is.
I gotta disagree with you on the end there, because like if she hadn't, we'd be saying, wow, she doesn't react to anything, she doesn't do anything, she just lets everything happen to her.
I tell you, if somebody knocks over my fort, that's when the evil in my heart hits me, and I just fall right off on that evil scale, and I just want to kill some people.
Joffrey, what would Joffrey do? WWJD, what would Joffrey do?
Oh my goodness. Terrible. I had the comment off of something you had said, Gary, if I could rewind just really quick. You had commented that Lysa wanted Sansa there because they thought they could keep her under their thumb or something like that. You had commented.
Yeah.
I want to disagree with that comment, or at least pick it apart a little bit, because Lysa says several times to Peter, why did you bring her here? Even if they had that thought that that's kind of what they were planning to do, to marry her off, I think that might have just been like a comment about what could we do with Sansa. Well, Robin needs a spouse. I don't think, especially towards the end of her non-flying days for Lysa, she was kind of questioning, like, why is Sansa here? I don't think she would want her son to be married to someone she thinks is trying to undermine her and her husband's relationship. I don't know. I'm curious, hearing that comment come out or being verbalized the way you said it, if Lysa was really on board with her marrying her son to Sansa. I think that Peter, like we've talked about, had clear motives about what he might have been thinking or planning with bringing Sansa there that Lysa might not have been part of. So yeah, I'm curious what he might have told her or brought her there for in the first place, in their eyes.
Peter Baelish would probably describe her as being very sweet and innocent and very much a victim. So I feel like if you describe someone as a constant victim of Joffrey and the Imp, that you'd probably describe them as someone who's pretty broken and would be very open to suggestion. But anyway, that was just a wild left field theory. You know, why does anyone do anything in Game of Thrones?
We're getting into the philosophy of Game of Thrones.
You win or you die.
Exactly. Sometimes you just gotta fillet some mother truckers.
All right. Do you have anything else, Amanda?
That was it.
All right. So I'm going to start off with my favorite point to bring up here. Fuck Sir Alistair Thorne.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my question maybe to the larger group here about this is, and maybe it's just the disconnect that, obviously Jon is my favorite character in the whole show. It's the Night's Watch. Jon was up there with the wildlings, and he's telling them the wildlings are coming, the wildlings are coming. But yet everybody in command, which is basically just Alistair Thorne and Janos Slynt for whatever reason, because he's they're constantly just pushing back that, like, no, you're lying here, or I don't believe it'll be as bad as you say it's going to be. Kind of. Where is that coming from these guys here? Like, why do they think why do they think Jon is basically like making all of this stuff up or whatever? Gary.
They see themselves as the establishment. and they see Jon Snow very much as the young blood and somebody who feels entitled. Like, if you ever got every interaction between Sir Alistair and Jon is that he feels like Jon is just an entitled brat. Like, talking about Robb and Aaron, like, that's how Sir Alistair sees Jon Snow, as just an entitled brat who, like, thinks he's so much better than everyone else and so much more lordly because that's how he was raised. And then Janis Flint was the commander of the City Watch, so a tried leader. So that's, I think, what it really is. It's just they're the establishment. They're the older gentlemen of the group, and they see themselves as the sorts of people who shouldn't have to follow someone else's orders. They should be like they've put in their dues that they should be in charge. I don't know who up next.
I think the what?
Nick.
I think the twofold. I think you're right about the establishment. Jon is getting, he's making proposals and people are supporting him. Like when they said, who all wants to go with Jon? And several people volunteered to range north and go to, take back Craster's Keep. I think that people want to be inspired in the Night's Watch. And there's, the old way of doing things. And then the new way that's kind of Jon Snow and, Dolores Ed and a couple other those people who are kind of like, this is actually a good idea and makes sense the way they propose it. So twofold, I think that there is unchecked jealousy at that, and they're just kind of like grumbling to themselves, well, why does nobody ever follow us? Well, we don't do anything. We just sit around, pissing down on all the people beneath us. And so then the people want to be inspired and go do things that sounds like it's good knowledge. Like you pointed out, Tyler, Jon has firsthand knowledge of the Wildling army. And he mentions, I think, in that first episode, have you ever seen a giant, Sir Alistair? And he knows what they're up against. The other part of that, just because I like to antagonize Tyler, it's also a little bit of staying in your lane. Are you a ranger, Lord Snow? Oh, no. Who are you with? He's a steward. I think that as much as that's a stupid argument, and obviously we're on Jon's side in that, he's not wrong. If the cook says this is what we should do, it's like a lot of those people, we know what Jon has been through because we have the omnipotent view that we've seen everything going on for these different characters. But for everybody else at Night's Watch, no crap. These guys were the City Watch commander, like we just stated, and Sir Alistair Thorne had some privilege or something, I think, before he came to the Night's Watch. I forget what. Whereas Jon Snow is a bastard and currently was told to be the steward for Sir Jorah Mormont, and now Jeor Mormont's dead. So there's a lot there that, like, where are you coming from? Who are you again? We've seen, with Ollie as the young boy who came and stayed at the Night's Watch, there have been new recruits who have come in who don't know the backstory for Jon. There's a lot of people there who are sitting at those tables wondering, who is this dude? He's just a steward. He's not a ranger. He's not a builder. Why does he get to make these decisions? I think maybe not defiance to the point of Alistair Thorne, but at least questioning the validity of where he's coming from. A little bit, just kind of undermine what you're talking about as devil's advocate, but there's some ground there to at least question who Jon is. Steven?
I think, honestly, I'm going to get back to what I had mentioned earlier, and that's as you get more entrenched in a position of leadership, you become more protective of that position of leadership. And this is not history, but you become more entrenched, you become more protective, and anyone, even if their well-being that encroaches on that position of leadership, if they start giving really good ideas and people start looking at you like, why aren't you giving those good ideas? You feel threatened. And right now, if there's one thing Janos Slint and what was the other guy's name? I forget his name. The one you hate.
Alistair Thorne?
Alistair Thorne. Janos Slint and Alistair Thorne are good at, it's being assholes and being dickish commanders and being people who who punch down to get up. Mm-hmm. And that's what they're doing right now. They're going right back to what they know best, and what they know best is to punch down and suppress any what would seem like new controversial ideas, like collapsing the tunnel, that are against conventional wisdom, because they are the conventional wisdom. Anything that goes against conventional wisdom, against the entrenched order, is against them. That's how they view it, at least.
Yeah, I think they're just old dogs who, like, imagine you told Grandpa that he could, pay his taxes on the internet, or he could, find an old friend on the internet. They're like, I don't believe that. That's crazy talk. We have to flood like, nobody can break this steel. It's cold rolled. Like, that's just, they're so entrenched, and they lack the imagination of a young man. Like, so.
I entirely agree.
See, I think that's at least the second time this episode Steven's agreed with me, so I'm doing good today.
Point to Gary.
I'll lose all the points next episode.
All right.
Tyler, what's
Thrones
your next
podcast.
point?
The rules are made up and the points don't matter.
The last point I had to talk about here, we're going to jump over to Steven's favorite character in Marine there, Miss Dany Targaryen.
No one can see this. Steven has the most, like, melancholy look on his face.
Went from Pod happy to Dany upset.
Where's Dany on your list, Steven? Between Joffrey and Pod.
She's like 75%, Joffrey.
No, she's not. No, she's not. Tyler had raised a point, and we already jumped in discussing Dany, but I raised my finger.
Right,
I've got a comment about that interaction. Go ahead, Tyler.
Okay. So we've kind of had this discussion here lately about kind of these points where Dany has taken it seems like, too far in her view of justice on this area of the world, this continent over here. So this is like one of the first times on this rewatch listening to her talk. So the conversation is about Yunkai being retaken by the Masters there. So Dany orders the Second Sons to basically go back to Yunkai, round up all the Masters, and murder them all. Which, for me, this is like the first time on a subsequent rewatch where I've been like, oh, holy shit, that's kind of just out there. That's a little Targaryen there, basically. A little too Targaryen for the world there.
A little too rap.
A little too Targaryen.
So, and then there's this line that says, I think comes from Dany. I think we talked about this of like, in order to live in the new world, it's like living in the new one or dying in the old one, as far as like the Master's views there. So, again, like this is the first time that it kind of just hit me per all of our conversations, like, wow, that's just a little bit too far. But she eventually has her mind changed by Jorah, and she makes sure that Jorah tells Dario, like, tell him that you changed my mind or something like that. So I'm just kind of curious of what other people take on this scene. So looks like we're going to go with Mr. Nick first.
I had my finger up right away because that was actually the point I had brought up. I don't think she's leaning hard on the Joffrey or the Hero of the Revolution side of the scale because she listens to her advisors, especially Jorah, her oldest and trusted advisor. We saw Sir Barristan Selmy that we talked about say sometimes you should answer injustice with justice. She, box back at it a little bit at first, saying, what, should I give them a stern warning? A fine? But she comes to terms to say, all right, go tell Dario and the Second Sons to have them, give them the option at least. And if they don't, this is what my demands are, that then they'll die in the old one, like you had commented. And not only does she change her mind on the subject, but she doesn't take the credit for it. It's a very modest thing to do, especially for someone who is a queen, who has taken over and raised, liberated, however you want to look at that verb there, 3 cities in the region. He says to Jorah, who they were just kind of joking back and forth, was also a slaver, was also somebody who has questionable background. No, tell Dario, tell my other advisors, you changed my mind. I think that shows growth. Again, the story is already written. People have understand how this show plays out. We know how this show plays out. For what we've seen so far in this story, it's a real turning point for her because she has been very, I will answer injustice with justice and crucifying people. Say that people who have gone back to murdering and pillaging in their own ways, well, we'll give them a second chance to come to see the light. That's big. I think that she's not 75%. I think she's more towards the 50% on that arc. 2 cents. I don't know who was first, Gary or Steven.
I'll let Steven go first because I had kind of a comment about cinematography and how those scenes were shot. So I'll let Steven. I'll go circle back on that.
So, as always, I will disagree with you. I don't believe that this is. I don't believe it's significant growth. Let's put it that way. I believe that
I'll concede to significant growth.
I believe that she comes off of having a quote unquote good night. She had a great time the previous night.
She's in a good mood.
She's in a good mood, which might be lending, I don't know, serotonin to her thinking or something like that. One way or another, her reflex is to just kill. That's her reflex. She is talked out of killing, and that is, that's something to be said. And I think she has let her advisors advise her in good ways before. That's nothing new. If there is something good about Dany, to some extent, it's that she does listen to advisors. Joffrey never listened to his advisors. There are many other the rulers that never listen to their advisors, and they've died for it. Dany does. Oh,
it's not true. Joffrey went to bed when Tywin told him he had to go to bed.
He wasn't tired, though. He wasn't tired.
But the fact is that she does listen to her advisors. That's not growth. That's not new. What would have been growth if she had come to that conclusion on her own? When I see her also giving the credit to Mormont, maybe, and this is I'm willing to admit this is probably the cynical portion of me. I see that as political infighting. I see that as she just fucked Dario. And so Dario thinks he is on the top of the world for her. He is the confidant. What better way to show him that he still has to fight for your affection and still has to fight for your approval than by just having someone else go down and say, hey, that thing that I just said that you could go do, I convinced her not to do it. Kind of put you in your place. It's I say that she is keeping her advisors kind of fighting against each other to an extent, which is a good thing for leaders to do to stop them from congealing into one, area of thought. But I don't particularly see it as a nice thing that she's doing. I see it more Machiavellian.
I could see that.
Machiavellian. It's from Niccolo Machiavelli.
Now you're just making shit up.
I think I could see that, but I don't know. I would attribute the perceived notion of setting them up to infight in the sense that she is a naive leader. I don't think that she knows that that's a possibility. I agree that's totally a possibility because Dario and even Barristan Selmy, for what his own reasons of being, the commanding leader of the largest army on this side of the Narrow Sea, or Jorah, because clearly he has intentions are romantic towards Dany, or Dario, who actually has romantic intentions and acts on them or is able to act on them. I think that each of those people have their own motives towards Dany. But I don't think Dany sees them as counterpoints that she needs to set up to fight each other. I think that she, and again, just as you conceded that it might be something that's in the cynicism, I will concede that perhaps it's my rose-colored glasses that she is doing it with hopefully better intentions or modest intentions to set them up for it. To say, yeah, go tell them that you changed my mind. I don't see her as maybe as a ding against her. I don't see her as having the wherewithal to be that subterfuge, that sneaky, the conniving. Sure, I don't see her as having the wherewithal to do that. Like you said, she is a Targaryen. Brutality or fire and blood, right? Force is probably going to be the first way she would do it. I don't think that playing the political intrigue is really her strong point. Might have been more with Viserys and her brother trying to marry her off or do this and you do this for me and tit for tat kind of thing. So I take a little bit of a jar against that I don't think that she did it intentionally, but I could see that would be something that could come from all of this, is that they, the guys, like we said, have their motives for themselves. They're all trying to get their own thing across.
To kind of maybe even expand a little bit further too on something you said there, Nick, and we've touched on this a lot with Danny in like the previous episodes where we've talked about like her upbringing wasn't in the realm of the lords and ladies of castles and stuff like that. It was basically on the road traveling with her brother. So as far as like the politics and the how to rule, she really probably never quite learned it like other people who, like, let's say, grew up in King's Landing learned about how ruling happens there. She grew up with her brother running from basically being killed by Robert Baratheon and his minions there. So she never really had you could sit there and say, oh, it's not that hard to be a good person sometimes, but also too, when you grew up being married to a warlord horse guy who their entire culture is killing and taking whatever you want there. Her brother definitely wasn't the most justly ruler.
Brilliant something or another.
He was brilliant in getting his golden crown, yes. Not the one he wanted, but the one he got. And, having 3 dragons, which is basically having 3 super powerful weapons there that can turn the tides of battle in an instant there. So her having all of this power and everything like that has definitely not helped her grow into the just ruler she thinks she is right now. She's still learning it, though, I would say.
Fair. That's fair.
Okay. I had a minor note about the Daenerys scenes, and that's that I think they, the way the outfits and I think it's shot a lot more softly, more similar to the way people look in King's Landing. Like, she's obviously in kind of a ruling phase. Like, I thought that her makeup looked like nicer. Her hair looked a little different. Like, it looked like they were trying to, I don't know. She looked purty.
She was in a good mood. She had the morning after glow.
Anyway.
Right. We're going to just sidestep that one and go straight into episode 8 here. Unless, Amanda, did you have anything? Probably not. Oh.
Nope, I'm good.
Okay. Episode 8, The Mountain and the Viper. Theon helps Ramsay seize Moat Cailin. The wildlings attack Molestown. Sansa comes up with a story to protect Lord Baelish. Daenerys finds out a secret about Jorah Mormont. Oberyn Martell faces Gregor Clegane, the Mountain. So, just a small note here. Moat Cailin is in the opening scene of the show here. And I will turn this over to, let's see here. Amanda, do you want to start us off with some of your questions for this?
Yes. Back over to Sansa. She the thinks that she tells her lie. She came up with that pretty fast. She stuck very well to the truth. Only changed what needed to be changed. And again, it's the next time that we see Sansa like taking charge of things, where we're deciding what's going to happen. Peter looks at her and she looks at him, and do you guys think you said, Stephen, that you think that she's like that he's planned every step of the way, but like, do you think that he knew she was going to react like that?
That I don't think. I think that he really thought that he would have the chance to prep Sansa, and he was very much taken off guard by the fact that these people were going to be clever enough to not let him prep Sansa. And I think that was a little bit of a flaw in his plan. I don't think he saw it coming, but he didn't panic. He waited for what the opportunity might bring, what might happen, like he's wont to do. And everything, obviously, I mean, Sansa played a different card. I think the growth there is very much Sansa. That is something that, at least for me, when I first watched this episode, was not expecting. And when that happened, I'm just like, what? Did she just really do what I've... Okay. But no, I don't think he had this in his plan. But I don't think that this was necessarily a massive hitch in his plan either.
I just really quick, yeah, I agree, because he gets up, I believe, like he makes a motion, like he's gonna go grab her and talk to her, and I think they have some comment about, no, we prefer to speak to her, it's like unadulterated or something like that. So I don't think that was something he had planned. So he's very much on edge or concerned, but yeah, he keeps a poker face.
Do you think the way Sansa tells the story is to specifically kind of sort of exert control over Lord Baelish, like to sort of make him think that she might tell the whole truth, or was it just sort of the macro look at the show where like the writers were trying to make you think, trying to do the 180 on you? Tyler?
I would probably say it's I don't know if it's an old phrase or whatever, the best lie has a hint of truth in it or something like that. So in order for her, because she's still new in this whole, deceit game here and everything like that she's been learning from everyone. So in order for her to get through the story as well as she could, she had to basically tell it with a bunch of truth to it there. So that was my take on how she decided to go about that. Nick?
I agree. I think that Gary, your comment was do we think that she was
trying to make him squirm? Was trying to make Baelish squirm?
Yeah, like an intent behind her words, or she just sort of saying things. I think she actually did try to make him squirm a little bit. Maybe kind of put him in his place, or at the very least say that she didn't appreciate being used as a pawn to get rid of Lysa. I think that, as we talked about with the previous episode, Sansa, some of these characters that we thought were very naive are kind of coming into their own a little bit. And so whether it was artfully done or masterfully concocted, I don't think so. But I think that she was kind of saying her words and picking them very carefully in a way, like Tyler said, that was covering any concerning things in their story and their alibi, but had some truth in it too, just to kind of seem plausible between them.
Does Amanda have a next question, or do you want to move to the next person?
I'm good.
All right, Steven, we'll go to you.
So there's an obvious place where we are going to end this episode, so I will not talk about that yet. I guess one of the things that I found kind of humorous about the episode, and I was kind of looking for your opinion on, is Reek's negotiations with the Ironborn and Moat Cailin.
Oh my goodness. And
just as he goes up there, starts giving that prepared speech that he had already, came basically prepped with. The guy there is this hard-ass Ironborn, and it says, no, we're never going to do anything. And then he gets oh my God, what is his name?
He gets the axe.
Well, yeah, no, what I was going to say is he gets the Theon treatment. As he is saying, no, we won't ever give up. We will die here, blah, blah, blah. One of his own men just comes up from behind him and just goes, whack! All right, so what's the deal? And that's exactly what happened to Theon.
Good, interesting perspective.
It says something about the Ironborn. I will say that right away. Like, I was talking about SEAL Team Ironborn last time. We're talking about a different type of Ironborn this time. And it ends up surrendering the fort. and ends well for everyone. Everyone ends okay. It was happily ever after. So yeah, Nick, what are your thoughts?
That was one of those scenes for me that again is hard to watch because I remember when it first happened. You know, of course, the hero of the revolution is not a person who's going to keep his word, and everybody gets to leave freely. Like from day one, he's been introduced. We know he just likes to mess with people, and it's head games all the way. Knowing that that scene was coming up again, now that we've witnessed it a second time here, like, that scene is so rough because again, like in the previous episode with the farmer, who gets attacked at his own place and talks about there's no balance left anymore. It's not a fair trade for things. People are willing to spit on you to just see their own ends. There's so many people in this world that populate this world who either don't get that story arc or don't have a happy ending, and it's the brutality for me of how quickly we see that come to fruition. Because the cinematography that Gary's commented on of that transition is you see this character half smiling about what does it say in the sheet that if we surrender we live. That's all he wants is just to leave with his life, right? Not like we get a shred of dignity or you'll send us off with X amount of gold from the keep. We get to live, right? At a bare minimum, that's all I want. And that scene is filmed with a hard transition from him alive to what has transpired in the last couple hours for that individual. And I paused it because apparently I'm more macabre than I think I am.
Huh.
That individual lost an eye and was flayed, and you can see like spear sticks shoved down his collar. Brutal. Like, not only do you not get to live, you die in a very, very slow, torturous, painful way. It's just like it's coming, right? It's one of those things. It's like no one here gets to live, and it's just this rough world for so many characters. In the Game of Thrones story.
If you
Nick.
if you think this has a happy ending, you haven't been paying attention.
Yep.
If you came for justice, you're in the wrong place.
If you would have done it, how would you have done it? And how do you think they were overtaken? Do you think they just opened the gates and like they just stormed in and killed everyone? Or do you think they're like, oh we're gonna walk out gently, like, and then they're just gonna like, because somehow Theon has to survive this encounter, like, or he's just cowering in the fucking corner.
Well, like in normal surrender. Oh, sorry. Real quick, in normal surrender terms, you'd have men lay down their weapons, and so they'd walk out of the fort, and you'd have a big pile next to the fort, and you just lay down your weapon. You throw your weapon into there, and from there you're free to go. I bet you money that our hero of the revolution also had a nice little camp where they could bed down and wait until everyone was out so they could leave, and that camp was surrounded by spears and knives and flaying materials, and your hero of the revolution got his pound of flesh.
It looked like it was in Moat Cailin though, but I wouldn't think you'd want to get blood in your own keep. I think you'd want to get blood on the outside of your keep. Sorry, Tyler.
I was going to say too, I mean, it's shown when we're first introduced to all the Ironborn men here that they're all sickly and dying basically, or very, very sick there. So I'm sure it doesn't take much to take over this. And also too, I don't think the Boltons really care about Moat Cailin other than they needed to show power by getting these foreign invaders off of their lands.
Absolutely. I think the hero of the revolution sat there with his, crap-eaten grin on his face about, no, by all means, come out. We'd love to have you. Or waltzed in while they were there and said, lay down your weapons. You'll be free to go, with a huge crap-eaten grin on his face, and just stood there smiling at them. Or maybe even walked up to this one poor schmuck who was their designated leader, and that was when he stabbed him in the eye or started killing people. And no, I knowing unfortunately the brutality of this scene, and especially of House Bolton, I'm sure that was a slow, painful thing. Yeah. When the knives did come out, but it was the show of friendliness when it first transpired, and they did lower their things. I would think Theon probably cowered in the corner. knew it was coming, and I either not like coward, like didn't want to witness the torture. Probably is unfortunately so shattered that he just stood there like, staring at it, knowing it was coming. I don't know.
I'm sure, talking about that, I'm sure that our hero of the revolution had Reek do some of the flaying himself.
Oh, even darker, but very likely. Ooh.
Hadn't thought about that, but that's probably likely.
That's likely, right? Or while the person this is dark, but while the person is still alive, right? You see, Reek, here's how you do the slice, right? And while the person's screaming, he's just like talking to Reek and explaining to his folks. It's like, ugh. Yeah.
So yeah, that was a. I found it.
I feel in those instances more for the common folk who don't get a backstory, don't get a happy ending, than I do sometimes for the people who like are main characters, just because those scenes are so rough. And it's the world and the writers treat them like they're meaningless. They are, but those are the ones that are hard to swallow for me.
That was. Yeah, it was a strange scene, and I just I like how it characterizes, and I don't think it does a good job for continuing this characterization, but it does characterize that when things get really hard, the Ironborn do back down, and they back down fairly quickly, and they're willing to kill their own to do it. And that's not something that's shown later on. It's apparent they become one mega. Well, sorry, that's later on. But anyways, it was an interesting scene for me. The other one is the raid on Molestown was another very brutal event, a brutal attack, and the screenwriters try to make us feel a little bit less bad about it by showing, they're all whores, they're all evil, they're all, this is basically Sodom and Gomorrah rolled into one. So when the wildlings come in and just kill everyone, we're just going, I mean, that's bad, but it's not that bad. They kind of had it coming. And we see a couple people who are going to become important in the future taking place in this, and very much killing women, killing probably children, going off, and we end up forgiving this person in general. And I'm not sure how that makes me feel, because he becomes a crowd favorite, and he is. It's kind of goes the way of the. Grammar. I'm not sure what that means.
Sodom and Gomorrah.
Oh,
I was just making fun of your constant references to crap that I don't understand.
Oh, okay. But I forgot where I was going with that.
The favorite new wildling? You were saying something. Who was that? Was that the guy who eats people?
No, it is. I don't want to spoil it for anyone if they haven't seen it, so I'm not going to tell you who it is. But one of the people ends up becoming a crowd favorite. He's killing women and children. He's basically doing the Viking thing, and we're kind of supposed to go, oh yeah, he's doing the right thing here. Just trying to get them out, and it's another duality that shows for the show is how someone can be an absolute butcher of civilians in one scene, and the next scene we're supposed to go, I hope he gets his love interest.
As we sit there watching Jaime Lannister.
Right. I think that there's a lot of, again, going back to like how these secondary, third-rate characters are portrayed. We see some of them and it's like, oh man, my heart goes out to these people because they gave in or they forfeited, and it's rough because you hope that these people who are meek, that the timid get rewarded, whereas the people like you were saying, Stephen, who might have questionable moral ambiguity, you hope that they get their just desserts, and we don't really worry about their deaths, even though they also secondary characters.
Nick, the meek don't get rewarded. The reek get rewarded.
Oh my god. Did that
Sorry.
really just happen?
Yes.
Slow clap. He's been sitting on that one for the last hour and a half. I think that it speaks to how jaded we get watching this show. There are certainly characters that you do hope get a story arc and do get rewarded. And the more you see a character on screen, our views change of them based on how they interact with their world. Some of these characters, again, like you said, try not to give too much away, don't know a lot about other than what we've seen of them. And you're like, that seems like something they would do. When they're presented with different situations, even the ones that we've seen from a long time, we've seen them go through different situations. We look back on it now and it's like, they've been through the ringer. Like, yeah, they would be changed. That makes sense of who they are now. And you start to root for these characters that originally you don't really think were great people. So, leaving the field very wide open for what may or may not happen as we discuss these episodes. Dany, Jaime, Tyrion, Tywin, are these characters that we hated at first or loved at first that now we feel the opposite way about? So I think it is plausible that a character who's a wildling may become someone that we think has a better story to tell later on. But right now, you're very true. Keeping them in the context of what we know about them. Right now in this moment, it is absolutely horrific what they're doing. I don't know how you justify that. Knowing future, probably the problem with knowing the future. But
yeah,
right now, judging them and what they're doing, yeah, we see the flaws and the faults of these characters. It makes them more humanized. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's, the golden child.
Yeah, definitely.
Who is the next point?
Was that everything for you, Steven?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Gary, you're up next.
Similar to the attack on Molestown, I guess my question was, why do you think Ygritte spared Lily and little Sam?
Gilly.
Because we have to like her.
What?
Because we have to like her. There's no
Have
reason.
to like her? You
Because
don't like her?
Yeah, we have to like her. She's the love interest.
I mean, do you not like her? What do you mean we have to like her?
But that's the point. That's why she doesn't kill him. Because if she killed the baby and Sam's girlfriend, would we still like her? No, of course not.
Do you think it's a little bit of writing and plot armor? You don't think there's a deeper backstory or trying to make them more? It's fake depth for the character is what you're saying. It's not trying to make her seem like a more complex character. It's just faking it at this point.
Yeah, I think so, personally. And you guys can 100% feel free to disagree with me on this because I'm not stuck in this opinion, but I feel like there was no reason, after what we see some of the other characters that I just alluded to do that same thing, there's no reason she wouldn't be doing the same. And she is just as
honest about
Have they met each other before?
She thinks scaring a
No,
mother and
I don't
child.
believe so. But she's just as hateful of the Northerners as he is.
More so, I would say.
Yeah, no, there's no reason why she wouldn't do this. Why she wouldn't just kill the baby and kill her as they do. It's for the audience that she doesn't.
Any other opinions?
I got nothing really other than maybe her still not over the hurt from Jon Snow and the future she envisioned of having with him, of having a child and stuff like that at some point in time. She comes across this mother and child there and she's like, oh yeah, I can't do this right now. But again, that's me stretching very, very hard to try and come up with that, though. I would probably mostly.
I just thought it was interesting, like that Steven's answer was like, "This is just trying to ingratiate the character to the audience," which I guess is fair, like because it really doesn't make sense to any point. Like it's just like she murdered 5 other women, like 10 feet over. Like
She shot a farmer in his back, or was going to. I don't remember if she did or not.
She shot the little boy's mom or dad. Yeah. So, anyway, that was that. My next point was about Ramsay Bolton, hero of the revolution,
Who-
oldest
who?
son and heir to the Warden of the North.
Ramsay who though?
Ramsay Bolton.
Oh,
Huh?
again.
He is named. He gets his title in this episode.
Ramsay Bolton is his name.
I just thought that it was, I don't know. Obviously, I'm a fake hero of Ramsay Bolton. Strongly
Hero.
fake hero. But I guess trying to play devil's advocate for what is a very morally ambiguous character who only gets more disgusting. Like, Tyler.
Morally ambiguous. What are you talking about? He is very, very evil. There's
He's got some redeeming qualities.
There's no ambiguity to him. He is a very evil character.
Potato.
Anyway, trying to play devil's advocate, he's just trying to impress his father because he's a bastard child. And so he does all this crazy stuff to get back this castle for his father to try to impress him because that's all he wants. All he's been dying for is his father's approval. I was going to say, like, did anyone... Obviously, I'm a fake hero of him. That he really is, like, speechless when he's given the honor of taking the family name. Like, he is... I don't think he expected it. He was very much trying to win favor with his father to stop being the bastard child. But when I rewatched it, like, you really get the sense that he is truly honored. Like, this was an honor beyond his belief. He just wanted to maybe be a knight or be somebody who, you know, would have some... But he becomes the heir of the Warden of the North. Like, and he is... truly speechless. And then the next scene over, he's like, Reek, we're gonna go home, we're gonna have a bath. Like, he is on cloud fucking 9. Like, he did some crazy brutal shit and he didn't get rewarded for it. He got a title and a castle out of this adventure. Like,
he gets legitimized, basically.
Legitimized.
Yep.
Like, much like Braun in the last episode, he did some real shitty shit, and he got rewarded for it.
Yeah.
That's actually a good comparison.
And we don't have to say where they're going, but we get the ominous shot of the horizon of the castle they are marching towards.
Yeah. Anyway, my fake hero-dom. He just gets more exciting.
Hero-dom. Uh-huh.
Hero-dom actual idolization.
My last item before the final battle is the beetle smashing story, which is just real fucking random. On a rewatch, I sort of just forgot it was there, but it is probably 5 minutes of a Game of Thrones episode that really leads nowhere, does nothing. Do you guys think there was some sort of symbolism in this beetle story?
I forgot about that story too until we were watching it, and then I agree with you. It is a really long story. And I kept waiting for the end to be like, oh, here's how it relates, and then it's not. It's just a story.
Just a story. It's just comic farce before just a brutal ass battle. Tyler.
So I'm going to take a shot at this. Kind of just hit me of maybe what that scene was really about. There is Tyrion is coming kind of close to that. The thought here that he might die, basically, regardless of, the outcome might end not in his favor. He might die. So he's trying to wonder is there a purpose? Is there some overarching reasoning why stuff happens here? So he then talks about this simple cousin that they had there, and he talks about spending his time trying to understand why is he doing this? Why is he sitting out there in the garden smashing all of these bugs constantly over and over? And he talks about, how Tyrion's a very smart person, and he's read all of these books about all these great people, but there's not ever a story or anything written down about all of these
morons. There's no great research on morons.
Yeah. So in Tyrion's quest to kind of understand basically his universe and everything like that, in that part there, he's trying to figure out, is there a reason, is there some purpose for why he's doing this? And ultimately it comes down to, no, there's no purpose to any of this. Stuff is just happening to happen there. So, and I think Jamie touches on this too, of people die all the time and nobody gives really, I think he's more points it back towards the Beatles, but something that's, Jamie kind of relates it back to like people die all the time for no good reason there, pretty much. So there is really no rhyme or purpose to why somebody dies, which is, I think, what the story was trying to tell us there. Gary.
I was gonna say, was it more about his, like, as an adult, his very much like being a politician and realizing everyone has angles, and just growing up in a world where he couldn't be a great warrior, but he could just try to sort of figure people out, that maybe it's his death's introspection about, like, the one mystery I ever had, like the one person I just couldn't fucking figure out was this moron. Like, and so that will, like, bother me into the end of my days. It's just like, why did he do it? Like, I can figure out why everyone else is doing this for power, money, wealth, like women. Just a completely. Also, is there some symbolism to the smashing of the beetle and, you know, somebody's death near the end of the episode just being very brutal and sudden and unexplained? So, anyway, that is all I have up to the end of the episode. Anyone have anything before the end of the episode? Otherwise, I can talk about my spear polishing, and that's the last note I have.
Nick, what do you got?
I'll say that most of my comments are about the end battle as well, so we'll just go off those.
I was going to touch on here just so Barristan receives that note from some random person about I think it ends up basically being the pardon letter Jorah would have received from Robert Baratheon for his pardoning. My question is, like, where did the note come from there? Because you look at the wax seal and it's a red hand of the king wax on there, but I don't think it was from Tywin, because I think Tywin uses black, but I could be wrong there completely. I could just be making stuff up too, but like, I'm just kind of curious if anyone had any thoughts of where did this come from all of a sudden.
Yeah, you're made to believe it's the original letter because it's signed by Robert Baratheon, but the original pardon, like, some kid delivered it to him and assumably he just threw it away, like, years ago. So is it assumed that it's the same letter he was presented years earlier that just happened to be, like, sent back to the spider and the spider sent it the other direction? Or
So I don't think he got the original letter. I think he was going to get the letter when his job was done, and the letter was already made out, etc., etc. Bureaucratic process being what it is. Varys got a hold of it, and Varys was very much for killing off Daenerys because he wants the stability of the kingdom. He learns probably through his little birds that his spy is no longer a spy. She is a full-fledged member of that crew. Well, now that he has a loose end that he can get rid of like that, and he decides to act on it. I think this is Varys through and through.
I can see that.
do you think it's just waiting for the opportunity? Because obviously if she's a traveling, like, group, it's harder to probably get your spiders there. But now that she has a seat of power, Daenerys has a seat of power and is a threat, she has an army, is now just when he decided to pull the trigger to add some instability to the, like...
Yeah, could be. I mean, you're at no more vulnerable time than when you are ruling a place that does not want to be ruled by you.
Right. You think you're on top of the world.
Also, the decision to give it specifically to Barristan Selmy. Is there some assumption that maybe Barristan still has divided loyalties? Or maybe the assumption is that Barristan will be pardoned. Although he already got Harrenhal and...
I think Barristan, it's given to Barristan because he's the more honorable one. They know his honor would compel him to bring it forward like he did.
He's not going to use it for his own devices. He's going to use it specifically to get this guy out of the picture.
I had a comment about, do we give it to Barristan Selmy because we think that his loyalties may still be split? I think that there was that comment at the small council where Tywin says it was folly to sell out Barristan Selmy and him to leave. He is an accomplished swordsman, even in his older age. So maybe a play at forgiveness and trying to win him back? I don't know.
Yeah, I could see that like Tywin still sees Barristan Selmy as an honorable man and somebody who in his core only wants what's best for the realm. So maybe it's a play. But I think based on the seal, you're supposed to assume it's by the hand, so it's from Tywin.
All right.
You had that comment, Tyler. Sorry, when you had that comment about the seal on the hand, there is a scene where Tywin is stamping letters. He's talking to Cersei. Is this meant to be one of those letters that maybe it was written out by Robert originally, and he's finally like, all right, when the time comes, you can send this off. The last 4 seasons happen, and now he's finally like, oh yeah, here's this letter. I'll go ahead and send this off. He pours some stamp on it, seals it, and we see him set it aside, and now this might be said letter.
Yeah, I think the pardon was literally written around the time that Robert was on his deathbed. So that would work out that this paperwork might have just been sitting around, and between that timeline, like a couple hands of the king shuffle through, like this paperwork has just been lost. I don't think Tyrion probably would have worried about it when he saw it, like, oh, it's a pardon for this guy, like how is this going to help me gain stature? Like, I don't know.
All right, and then the final part, I'm just going to bring up, we don't have to talk on it really very much, but it's kind of a hilarious scene where, and also kind of really a little tragic if you think about like who's all there. Like Arya and the Hound make it up to the bloody gate there of the Eyrie, only to find out that Lysa Arryn has been killed 3 days ago, and Arya just laughs at the whole thing too. But it's also kind of, from the viewer's perspective, if you stop and think about it a little bit too, this is again the closest Arya has gotten to family, only to have it turned away. And she doesn't even know that Sansa's there in the Eyrie right now too. So, all right.
So, like, from her perspective, that's her aunt, that she would laugh at that. But also, these guards, with the assumption that she's actually who she says are, if the first reaction is that this girl, they can't prove is Arya Stark, starts laughing, that really decreases her credibility of who she is, too.
Arya's not laughing at the death. Arya's just laughing at the fact that the Hound basically can't get his wish there of taking her to the Eyrie for gold.
I also think she's laughing just because it's just one more thing that she thought she was right there. She was right about to be saved and just pulled out from under her. And at that point, I mean, she's been through this so many times. What are you going to do? She's going to go, oh my God, my aunt. Nah, she...
Like the third or fourth time that she's been in the company of somebody who's going to get her to family. The first was the Night's Watch guy. The second was the Brotherhood Without Banners. The third was the Hound trying to bring her to the Red Wedding. And this is like the fourth attempt to get her to family. Yep. And it just fails.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Moving on to the main event of the episode, the battle between the Viper and the Mountain. Who wants to take it first?
My only note was on a rewatch, you see that someone is polishing Oberyn's spears, and the next episode you find out that the Viper might have poison involved. So that was on something I caught on a rewatch. And that was all I had about the rest of the episode. Nothing else interesting happens.
I was coming into this episode. There are several episodes in Game of Thrones that I kind of cringe at watching, and this was one of them specifically for what happens to the Viper. It's a God. Just don't. I yelled this out loud. Don't play with your food. Just fucking kill him. And that's what the Viper's doing. He plays with it. He is faster. He is more agile. He is more deadly, probably, than the Hound. But he doesn't understand that the Hound has fucking staying power for days.
Mountain, you mean?
The mountain.
I'm sorry, you're right.
He doesn't understand, like, the whole rest of the battle. He's understanding his distances when the mountain is swinging this great sword with lots of power. Like, he busts the first spear he has. But for some reason, he loses the sense of distance when the mountain's on his back and the mountain is within arm's reach of his legs. It's just, poor planning, playing with his food.
And he was so obsessed. Sorry, he was so obsessed with his mission there. He was basically sitting there. He's seeing himself at the end of the mission there. He's like, "Oh, I'm so close. I just need him to confess or whatever, that I can kill him." And he makes the fatal mistake.
He takes his eyes off of the mountain and puts his attention towards Tywin, and tries to, like, he loses focus on, like, that he's still in battle. And he's like, don't die yet. So he tries to, because he tries to extend out the mountain's life, he doesn't leave him quite dead enough to get a confession. Or he does get a confession. I don't know.
I don't think I've been able to actually watch that part of the scene since the very first time I ever watched Game of Thrones. They did a very good job of making it as brutal as possible.
I was actually going to ask, do you guys think, like, there are a handful of iconic deaths in Game of Thrones? Was this one of the iconic deaths? Was the Viper?
Yes. Best death in the show. I don't know. I can't even think of another death that's like, Joffrey dies, but this is hands down better than Joffrey dying.
I'll say it's definitely iconic death.
Harry still manages to surprise me.
It's definitely an iconic death, but it's also one of those things that happened in the show that made me frustrated to go poke around the internet for a while there too, because everyone who was a TV watcher was so upset that they killed off this great character, Oberyn. But those people who know, this happens in the books. This happens for a reason in the books there, basically, because it needs to set Tyrion on his path that he goes down there. And it's just so frustrating to constantly just see that. It's just like, oh, they shouldn't have killed off Oberyn. He was such a great character. Like, no, he's supposed to die. That is what his purpose is in the story.
Well, not just that. I think that's sorry, real quick.
I'll let Steven go first.
Sorry. One of the amazing things about Game of Thrones that I feel like they lost towards the end was the ability to take characters that you care deeply about and shove a spear down their throat. And that's what made you want to watch.
Okay, my small thing was on Tyler's point was that while the entire run of Game of Thrones, you did catch that there were some people who just didn't even realize there was a fucking book. So, Tyler was talking about why did they kill him off? It's because so many people didn't understand that this was a different work of fiction that was converted. That's all I was going to say is that, there were those people throughout the entire run. I was one. I didn't probably know until after season 2 that it was actually books. Tyler?
And this is a great thing, too, of, how Game of Thrones, how the show, the series and stuff like that, change kind of the narratives of, the good guys don't always win. You're set up of, the good guys, we're so close. He's so close to saving Tyrion's life there. So close. And then he dies. Basically, not only killing him, but also then dooming Tyrion's character to die for his events there.
And it gives you a little bit of that sense of fear going into those battles. Your hero might literally die. It's not some Bond thing where Dr. No, in the end, is going to exposit long enough for James Bond to get out of the scenario. No. Ed's dead. Ed is dead. And he is dead as a doorknob. Robb is dead as a doorknob. Catelyn has a slit in her throat. I mean, your heroes die, and I don't want to say it's great, but it gives you a sense of attachment.
Okay, here's my random devil's advocate. If
I wanna hear your
Tyrion
devil's advocate.
ran over and grabbed the spear and just jammed it in the fucking mountain's throat, he still loses the battle of combat, but you make sure the mountain's dead. That's my opinion. Like, because the mountain is at its weakest point ever, and if you want to hurt your father just a little bit, you kill the mountain, because you still have just taken something from him.
At the end of the battle, the mountain looked pretty dead to me. Like,
He's
honestly,
alive enough to deliver a 1-minute fucking speech.
No. I have other deaths that have happened too, like, you know, several of those, they were gonna die no matter what. Like, in that scene, they were not gonna just... One, I mean, that's because of the fact that, like, he could have... 2 seconds, he could have gotten out of it, like... So close. Like, Ned Stark, I mean, he wasn't gonna be able to run away from... ill and pain and not get beheaded. Catelyn Stark wasn't gonna be able to run out of the twins, but this one just drove me nuts because I was like, dude, you were literally a foot away from like surviving.
He could have stabbed his, like, the mountain's tummy, his hand, something. Like, he literally, I don't even know if he has a weapon when he gets, he does. He gets, when he's gets knocked over, he's holding his spear. So sad.
So
He said toying with his food.
And so ends Oberyn Martell. Long may he reign.
long may he reign.
All right.
Won't see his kind again.
Oh.
I see what you did there, man. He won't see his kind again.
Oh, I did not see that.
I don't get the
Just
joke.
like
You'll have
Oberyn.
to tell it to me after the episode.
All right. All right. So that wraps up what we've done here so far. For next time, we got 2 more episodes. One of them is top 3 for me, all-time greatest episodes of Game of Thrones. Episode 9, The Watchers on the Wall. And then followed up by episode 10, The Children. All right. Well, thanks for listening, everyone. Hope you have a good one.
Bye.
Remember, the hero of the revolution.